Starting next month, the U.S. will lift pandemic travel restrictions along its borders with Canada and Mexico for people who are vaccinated. Both borders have been closed for non-essential travel since March of 2020. Under these new rules, people who are vaccinated against COVID-19 will be able to travel to the U.S. for things such as tourism and family visits. For the past 19 months, travel had been restricted to those whose jobs are considered essential. U.S. citizens, green card holders, and people traveling for medical reasons were also exempt. For more on this, let's bring in CBS News immigration reporter Camilo Montoya-Galvez. Camilo, thanks for being here. So, for months, Canadian and Mexican officials have been urging the Biden administration to lift these travel restrictions. What impact have closed borders had on these two nations, and why are we seeing action from the U.S. right now?
Hi, Lana. The Biden administration certainly had been facing mounting pressure to lift these Trump-era border restrictions on non-essential travel along the borders with Canada and Mexico. We know that this was a rare instance in which Republican and Democratic officials in border states actually came together to call for an end to these travel limits. They highlighted particularly the economic impact of these restrictions, which really hurt border communities like El Paso, Texas, San Diego, California, and Buffalo, New York, that really rely on cross-border travel, tourism, and commerce. I actually spoke with Democratic Congresswoman Veronica Escobar of El Paso, Texas, yesterday, and she said that in addition to this negative economic impact, the non-essential travel restrictions also negatively affected family unity. She mentioned that some Mexican immigrants were not able to visit their family in the U.S. because that travel is not considered essential in the eyes of the U.S. government. So this is a move that is being welcomed by border communities and by Democrats and Republicans alike.
We know that there are so many people who have been waiting for that. A question for you, though, Camilo. Will the U.S. recognize vaccines that are widely used in other countries like AstraZeneca but aren't approved for use here?
Excellent question. We were actually briefed by Biden administration officials last night on this plan, and we asked them about this particular topic, about which vaccines the U.S. will actually recognize, and they said that the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention are still determining which vaccines the U.S. government will recognize. So we should expect some guidance in the coming weeks.
Okay, well, stay tuned for that. I also want to ask you about Title 42. Obviously, you and I have discussed this a lot. The U.S. has been using the Public Health Authority to expel migrants before they can even request asylum in the U.S. Might this policy be impacted?
I'm glad you asked this question, Lana, because during the pandemic, there have been two separate border restrictions, the travel limits on non-essential travel that we just discussed, but also this Title 42 public health law that allows officials to expel migrants and asylum seekers without allowing them to seek U.S. refuge. Biden administration officials stressed to us yesterday that this announcement on non-essential travel restrictions will not impact the enforcement of Title 42. So migrants and asylum seekers who don't have legal permission to enter the U.S. will continue to be expelled to Canada, Mexico, or to their home country. This is, again, the public health law that the Biden administration and the Trump administration have argued is necessary to prevent COVID-19 outbreaks inside migrant holding facilities. We asked why this is the case, why they're continuing this policy, and they said that unlike travelers who have legal permission to enter the country, migrants who are undocumented have to be detained in border facilities where social distancing cannot be practiced. So that is the public health argument that the Biden administration is citing, but obviously advocates for asylum seekers believe that seeking asylum should be considered an essential activity and that the U.S. should start processing these claims as soon as possible.
And it sounds like they're not even that they intend to still use, Title 42, regardless of whether or not any of those migrants have the ability to show that they have, in fact, been vaccinated. Camilo, as we're talking about the rule change, it's impacting those who want to travel for non-essential reasons like tourism or family visits. Is there going to be any impact felt by these essential travelers?
Another great question. The answer is yes. So in November, we will see that the so-called non-essential travelers, those who are looking to engage in tourism or family visits, will be allowed to enter the country if they're fully vaccinated against the coronavirus. But starting in January of next year, all travelers, including those who are seeking to engage in quote-unquote essential travel, like truck drivers, will have to be fully vaccinated for the coronavirus. So everyone who is seeking to cross the Canadian or Mexican borders next January will need to be fully vaccinated against the coronavirus. And Customs and Border Protection, we are told, will accept both paper and digital proof of vaccination.
All right, Camilo, thank you.
Thanks, Lana.